A pulley is a mechanism that utilizes mechanical advantage in order to reduce the amount of work required to lift something up. The Latin American Youth Center is the pulley that lifts up the underprivileged and challenged youth in the greater Washington, D.C. area. I'm Jimmy Wenzel. This is Alex Petrov, Shabir Shivaji, and AJ Johnson. Today, we're going to identify the issues that the Latin American Youth Center faces, give our recommendations, and then tell you some possible outcomes that could happen if you implement our recommendations. The Latin American Youth Center is out here changing lives. Through its various programs, it affects educational, home life, and the professional development of challenged adolescents, and it's dramatically making a difference. As you can see in that bottom tricolor figure, we're completely reliant on revenue sources from government, foundation, and personal contributions. While it's important to understand that economic conditions drive these donations, which means that in times of economic turmoil, these funds can disappear. As you see in the upper right-hand figure, Washington, D.C. high school graduation rates are still well below the national average, and while LAYC's efforts are trying to combat this, we still have a lot of room to improve. We've identified 3 key issues with the case today, the first of which is a need to replicate the positive youth development curriculum. The second is to find new ways to bring in unrestricted sources of revenue. And the third is that we need to find a structure for our volunteer program to increase numbers and retention. Our company is in the very top 5% of nonprofits in terms of size, and what this means is that we have the capability of affecting that many more lives than other nonprofits do, and we need to really solve these issues that face us today.
Thank you, Jimmy. So let's jump into the first issue. We're looking at ways to sell the positive youth development curriculum. We narrowed our options down to 4. From there, we selected a final choice based off 4 criteria: the opportunity for revenue, cost, impact, and market size. We determined that the customized curriculum is both our greatest strength and opportunity. It is a best practice replication unit, meaning that it's working for our company now, and we have the opportunity to help other nonprofit organizations while at the same time bring in a unrestricted source of revenue and gather valuable data. We determined that to sell the PYD curriculum, we also needed to package it with our ability to gather and analyze data, and then finally adjust the curriculum so that it fits a certain organization's culture, or rather salsa, as we like to say. Okay, so we determined that the process is going to take about 4 weeks of the program, and the price is going to be $15,000. The demand comes from existing interest. We know that both people and organizations have approached us interested in our success and methods. Secondly, the DC and Maryland youth nonprofit organizations are local. They're in our area. It keeps costs low, and it's where we're operating now. It's very important. And finally, school districts and other areas with at-risk demographics, that's where we want to be. That's kind of where our mission is and our focus. The impact, the impact of the Positive Youth Development Program is that we're going to gather unique data, and this is very valuable to us. It's going to be a new source of revenue, so we're less dependent on the government grants, and it's in line with our vision, and finally it's going to open the door for other best practice replication units to be sold and sent to nonprofit organizations in the future.
Thank you very much, Alex. Now, we need to reduce our dependence on grants, and the way that we specifically are going to do that is relying on individual personal donations. And the way that we do that is through engagement with the community. Now, not only do we know exactly how we need to produce sustainable funding through donations from individual contributors, but we have the method that we'd like to do it. We'd like to do it through a subscription-based model, which is rapidly growing in the nonprofit community and working for several other nonprofits in this industry. Now, the great news is that we already have a subscription-based model, but it doesn't do enough. We need to make this subscription-based model engage our community in a productive way, and the way that we do that is connecting this model with our children and the work that the children are doing right now. Now, what we noticed when analyzing this case is that these kids are not only becoming successful in the classroom, but this program is teaching them to be creative individuals and individuals who have a lot of potential to produce at creative outlets. The Art and Media Center is specifically an organization within this nonprofit that is helping children express themselves through creative outlets. Now, in this institute, they already produce music, they do spoken word, they do photography, they produce art, and it's really helped these kids with their emotional development outside the classroom. And to present a full picture of who these children are, we need to talk about their creative development as well as their academic development. You can't tell the story about Calvin Jackson without his experiences through learning about spoken word and his culture. You can't tell the story of Annabelle Pereira without her journey through learning art. Now, this art piece really spoke to all of us and is something that only an LACY kid could have produced. It shows these children leaving their houses, which represent their nation's flags and their nations, leading on the road to success in the United States. Now, there are statistical reasons why we need to implement this model, and we need to implement it in a certain way. We need to provide individualized and personalized messages to our subscription-based donors, letting them know about the children's academic and artistic creative processes that they're going through right now. Doing this and engaging with these donors in this way will produce a more consistent and predictable revenue stream and will provide greater diversity among revenue sources.
Thank you, AJ. As unsystemized as our volunteer program may be, we do have a great vision and mission statement which can only be further expanded through our volunteer program. While we do lack a sophisticated infrastructure, we already do have a few things going for us, such as our volunteer applications and our volunteer positions available. Another asset that the LAYC can take advantage of is their ETO asset. They can use the tracking and evaluation to their advantage to track how their volunteers are making an impact on the organization. So what we came up with is called the Latin American Youth Heroes. What it does is it takes into account the trend of episodic volunteers, the one-time volunteers who we might not see one often, but we also take into account the Latin American Youth Heroes, which are the volunteers that are looking for upward mobility. After serving 15 hours, they go through the screening and test training and become certified volunteers, and after 40 hours, we give them the position of the Latin American Youth Superhero, which pretty much gives them a supervisory position over the volunteer staff. Another great tool for social media is LinkedIn. What LinkedIn has done is they've created an entire platform for nonprofits and volunteers. What this does is when a volunteer is looking for a job, they go on LinkedIn and they look for nonprofits that they might be interested for working with, and this allows us to connect to a much larger base of volunteers and a much larger base of possible donors. Another great social media tool is Pinterest. What Pinterest is pretty much a social media app that uses videos and pictures as a powerful storytelling tool. The common nonprofits that are known for using this is the Gates Foundation. What they do is they take their photos and videos and use them to show the impact that their organization is having on society. It's created a powerful storytelling tool, and a lot of nonprofits have taken it into practice. Other forms of social media are vital to the success of nonprofits. It connects donors, volunteers, and employees all under one platform, thus leading to larger community engagement, which equals an increase in contributions. What we did to create an increase in contributions is a photo of the day concept, which allows us to always keep our donors and volunteers informed of what's going on in our organization. This is our implementation timeline. In the beginning of the quarter, we plan on revamping our social media presence right away, starting sending art photos to our donors, and also survey potential customers. In quarter 2 through 4, we will start our development of our PYDP program, and 2017 to 19, we will look into further expansion of the program.
We've put together some financials on our recommendations. This concludes our presentation, and we'd like to open up the floor to Q&A.
We'll now transition to our 10-minute Q&A session.
I have a question about the arts initiative. Do you see that as more of a means or an end to diversifying the revenue stream in terms of the creative expression of the students as being a tool for fundraising or as being the end of that fundraising in terms of an actual program at LAYC?
I think it's the means through fundraising more than anything. These kids are really producing content that we believe that our donors will see as valuable. This is really the means through which we'll engage our community. Right now, there's really not a great way that our organization reaches out to our donors, and it's not very organized at all. The donors are largely consistent of friends of the board and other members, such as friends of the people in the organization. What this really does is, what we're trying to do is connect the art to the community as the way that the art is representing the kids in the community.
To add on to that, it builds a relationship between both the kids and the donors, and that's going to bring repetitive donations and word of mouth, spread through word of mouth.
So I guess you guys came up with the price point of $1,500 for your $15,000, right? So have you guys, where'd you guys come up with this number? Because a lot of your clients are going to be SEMA community-based nonprofits, and some of them don't have that kind of cash to spare to begin with. And also, have you guys done any sort of market research to say this is what they're going to be able to pay?
So the $15,000 price point comes from a couple different sources. First and foremost, there's a $2,500 supplies and food cost alone for our program. And if you would go to the slide, just kind of outlining the timeline of our PYDP program, we're going in on multiple occasions. So this isn't a one-time, one-week curriculum for 42 hours. That is our initial first cohort where we go in. On top of that, we figured other costs of employees' salaries during that time. We're looking to have teams of 2 to 3 be able to go in with the cohort. On top of that, there's costs for our ETO software to be able to analyze the outcomes from that first cohort and gauge its effectiveness. Then we go back and we deliver a second cohort, custom fit to that organization's salsa, and we think that this multiple cohort demands a higher price point. We haven't done comparable analysis. We couldn't find another organization that was exactly doing that, but we also think that's an advantage to us because there isn't stark competition doing exactly what we're doing.
To follow up on that, was similar analysis performed for the other options available, like the simple curriculum and the partnering with universities as well? Or was this just priced out for this?
Yeah, we touched on that a little bit through our research.
We just priced this one out.
Yeah.
Now, going back to your strategies for expanding individual contributors, I like the sort of the statistics that you provided based on the surveys, and obviously repeat donors like other retailers, repeat customers is your best base for your revenue sustainment. But how are you going to expand and target the audience that you have not yet identified?
I think the answer to that is social media. Social media is the means through which we will find people that are interested in donating to our organization. It's a tool for community engagement within the local area, within the national area, and it really gets the word out about what we're doing. Right now, the social media efforts of the organization have been limited to a few different types of social media, such as Facebook. But really, as Shabir touched on, LinkedIn is a professional network that has access to about 9 million professionals who are interested in volunteering and hearing about volunteer organizations. Social media will be the means through which we connect to those individuals and get them interested in contributing to our organization.
And a large part of that will be through the LinkedIn platform that I was talking about earlier. There's over 4 million people on LinkedIn right now looking for volunteer jobs, and it's a much easier way for nonprofits to find those, nonprofits have trouble of finding skilled volunteers, So what this does is through their advanced search option, you're able to go on LinkedIn and type in the type of volunteer skill you're looking for, and it'll show you all the skilled individuals in the area who are looking to volunteer. And through that, it's a way to get rid of the ability to not find skilled volunteers.
To follow up on that also, the social media right now, the pages we have, are deeply underutilized, and we can see very easily growth through them.
Another reason why we want to do the photo of the day concept, to make sure like their social media is being utilized to the fullest extent.
On your slide 6 for the evaluating the options, so you only priced out the curriculum. Looking at it, it seems like partnering with universities, you said would be the same revenue for a fraction of the cost with the same impact and the same market size. What was the reason for?
So partnering with universities, you see the one box means unfavorable, so that would mean higher cost. We believe that partnering with universities could bring in the highest price point. We could charge the most if we decided that option, but for us, it would cost the most to seek out those universities and try to get them to partner with us.
Why would that be the highest cost? Are you working with students, or what does partnering with universities actually mean?
Essentially, you're starting a course with the university, like the college is endorsing the course that the youth development program is offering.
That means supplies, textbooks, registering the course, hiring a teacher.
More formalized process, we assume more overhead.
With the volunteer program that you guys came up with, in theory you're going to receive a huge increase in the number of volunteers that you're going to be receiving. So how exactly are you guys going to do the vetting process? How are you going to fund it? Did you do any analysis on that?
Yeah, absolutely. We did analysis on what we felt the costs of this expanded volunteer structure would be. And as far as the supervision and the organization of those volunteers, we believe that with the empowerment of our volunteers to become Latin American youth superheroes, after they've received this, after they've done a certain amount of volunteering and they've received that supervisor level where they start managing and organizing other teams of volunteers, that process kind of takes care of itself. And if you would just go to the cost, just the financial projection sheet, we put in the cost of a full-time volunteer program coordinator. We priced that at $35,000 a year to kind of head that and organize that. We assume that our organization already has some employees dedicated to dealing with and vetting our 40 to 100 volunteers already.
How did you guys come up with the financial projections? Because it seems like these are having a pretty healthy profit margin every year, and especially with the sudden implementation of all of these new programs, that's a lot of cash that's going to have to be devoted elsewhere. And looking at their cash flow statements, their operation hasn't been exactly the most profitable. So can you explain this surge in profit?
Certainly. And the reason these profits look so drastic, if you take a deeper look, it's because the incremental personal donations is the largest part of this. And we're assuming that because we use social media and we're leveraging our youth that are making the art, this is a very low-cost solution to try to raise personal donations. And this is assuming that we're going to be able to double the amount of personal donation we're getting. If you take a deeper look at the PYDP revenue, we're only projecting that in the first year where we're doing our pilot programs that we're bringing in $60,000 in revenue. The second year, expanding out to assuming that we're going to be able to not partner, but sell our services once a month and do 12 different companies. That's our revenue projections.
And just to follow up on that, I think there's one more key point that we can bring up in this slide. If you look at this bottom right-hand side of this chart in the left, the red indicates the year 2012. This organization has never really targeted social media in the way that we'd like to. It's never targeted individual donations in the way that we'd like to. And yet it still had 1 year where about 8% of its funding came from individual donations. Two out of the three recommendations that we propose involve large-scale community engagement, and we think it's not at all unrealistic that we can get up to about 5 to 8% of our funding from individual donations. It stands at about 2.8 right now.
That concludes our 10-minute Q&A session. So now we'll transition into the 5-minute presentation.
Thank you for your questions. So I want to go ahead and read you guys the Latin American Youth Center's mission statement. We believe in a future where all youth pursue their dreams, reach their goals, and acquire the skills and self-confidence to live a life of purpose, connection, contribution, and joy. Latin American Youth Center is not selling products, it's not selling services, it's changing the lives of human beings. And I think you all recognize the quote on the bottom from our President Abraham Lincoln, and a house divided against itself cannot stand. And I think that applies more than ever today as we stand in our nation's capital. Recently in our nation, there has been issues of income disparity, racial injustice, and general inequality that are ripping this nation apart, and it's on all of our shoulders to do everything we can to ensure for future generations, regardless of what situation they're born into, that they have the same opportunities. And that's what LAYC is here for, and that's why we need to solve the issues that we're faced with today.
The issues that the case presented us involve the replication of this model, the diversification of a revenue stream, and volunteer retention and structure. And our recommendations address all of these issues. Through the Positive Youth Development Program, we'll be able to replicate our model and reach more kids than we've ever been able to before. We'll be able to engage the community in a way that we've never been able to before in order to diversify our revenue stream. Through our LAYC Superheroes program, we'll have more volunteers than ever and more volunteer outreach than this organization has ever had before. Our interaction with the community will become exponential through all of our suggestions. We want to start being a bigger part of this community, and we feel that our solutions help us do so.
So this begs the question, how do we measure our impact? And yes, of course, we talked about dollar signs, we talked about the possible revenues we might be able to bring in with our recommendations, we talked about how much those recommendations may cost. But really, if you look at the ultimate goal, what are we looking to do? We're looking to impact the lives of the challenged and underprivileged youth in this country, and we're looking to empower them. So I think it comes down to two ways of measuring that. So qualitatively, we're going to receive feedback from the organizations that we work with, delivering our personal youth development programs to, hearing back from them about how this has changed, how effective they're able to work with their youths. We want to hear feedback from volunteers to hear about how much more they are incentivized to volunteer more often now that we have our volunteer superhero program in place. And we want to hear feedback about the happiness of our subscription donors, and we want to hear how they feel when they receive that mail of an art or a poem coming from one of our children. Quantitatively, I think it comes from the ETO, efforts to outcome data. We're going to do the analysis for the organizations that we're partnering with, and we're going to be able to see the improvements that their youths are scoring out on their testing, graduating high school, and landing jobs. We're going to be able to see that in the number of volunteers and the number of total volunteers that are actually engaged with the community and are interested in coming back more and more. And it's going to show in the increase in personal donations as a dollar amount. I think I can speak for all of us saying that we're very privileged on working with the Latin American Youth Center, and we'd like to thank you guys for hearing us out, and that concludes our presentation.